Welcome to the Wrestling Stable Show, where you don't join, you're chosen. Today is Friday, June 19th, 2020. On today's episode, I'm going to give my opinion on some of the thoughts from WWE legend The Undertaker as he made his media rounds this week, talking for one of the first times that we remember in history. He gave us a lot of insight. Obviously, he's here to plug his big documentary, The Last Ride, which airs its fifth episode, its last episode of this series, this Sunday on the WWE Network. Specifically, I'm going to talk about some of his comments on his stop at McAfee and Hawk Sports Talk. So on that show, he mentioned that one of the biggest success factors in his 30-year illustrious Hall of Fame career was the ability for him to stay in character. And that's something that the new generation really doesn't abide to as much anymore. Especially in the ages of social media, you can see one storyline play out on camera, and then they're more their quote unquote real selves on social media. Back in his day, through all of his glory years, we really didn't have that. I think we got Undertaker on Twitter maybe 2 years ago, where we saw him playing Uno cards or something like that. But that it was very, very rare. And throughout his career, he'd go out to dinner, or he'd be on TV, and he'd be in full character. You would have no idea that there was this Mark Calloway man behind the character. He always was the Undertaker. Anytime he was out in person, whether he was in the ring or around the streets, you would have no idea. So that really brought up an interesting, some interesting thoughts to me. So, back in the day, one of the things that the legendary Four Horsemen was known for was, quote unquote, living the character. So they really had the limousines. They really had the jets. They really had the gold watches and the fancy suits, and lived this crazy party lifestyle. Now, that's probably not the healthiest thing for, if you're building a family, if you have a family at home, but they really lived their gimmick, if you will. Undertaker did the same thing. For the most part, it was just maybe not the wisest of choices that you could make, especially in the Horseman's case. But specifically on, I think of, Sergeant Slaughter, some of these other anti-Americans, especially the ones who were super patriotic and then, turned their back on America. I think of Sergeant Slaughter here, obviously, the American hero character, then turning on the fans, supporting, I think, Iraq during the war. He got death threats, and that was a day where, no matter what, hey, you live that character. You wouldn't see him out and about. Obviously, social media wasn't a thing where he could go and just say, hey, just kidding, it's just my character, relax, or anything like that. Undertaker through everything, and that is why this Last Dance special is so interesting. Excuse me, Last Ride. I got the Last Dance in my head. I've made that mistake a couple of times. So it's more like, hey, when is the right time to hang up the boots? It's more, this is the first time that we've ever seen kind of behind the scenes, and we've seen the Undertaker be on camera kind of as a true, documentary. So really interesting ideas there. Another example that Pat and the boys brought up was, this whole Rusev-Lana kind of feud. Obviously, it's absolutely ridiculous where, we know that Lana and Rusev are married. They live in the same house. And, but part of the storyline was that, they got divorced, and now Lana is married to Lashley, and but you'd see them on social media, obviously, in the same house throughout all that, right? So completely kind of killing that mystique. So it's just an interesting idea. I mean, let me know what you guys think about this. Should wrestlers kind of devote, because this is not just, hey, a 9-to-5 job. This is devoting your whole life. For basically 30 years, Undertaker could not be seen out in public outside of character. He couldn't be interviewed on a talk show. He couldn't be, interviewed for a special interview. He always had to be in the character. Do you think that's too much? Now, obviously, he gave a lot of credit to that as far as why he's had a 30-year career, but obviously, there's more to that. There's the fact that he's physically intimidating. There's the fact that he is so athletic. There's a lot of different facts besides just the fact that he was in character. He also spoke to the fact that kind of the difference in the camaraderie in the locker room, especially on international flights. So, back in his day, they would do an international flight. They'd all be together. They'd go to the show. After that, they go to the bar, shut down the bar, party, hang out as a team, really a great way for them to build that camaraderie, that trust, that respect, to get to know each other. He said, nothing personally against it, but nowadays, a lot of wrestlers will perform and then they'll go, maybe just back to the room, play video games, kind of just hang out in isolation. And that's maybe some of the reason that there's not this behind the scenes camaraderie anymore. Not necessarily that, like I said, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, especially if you have a family. I think it's smart to stay out of trouble. But, I think that, just from some of the stories that we hear, maybe everyone's not as close as they used to be. Another topic that he talked about was kind of this idea of the locker room leader. He said that he never really did anything to try to be the locker room leader. He didn't really know what was happening at the time. But since he had such a good relationship with corporate, obviously being really good friends with Vince McMahon, he was able to represent corporate and also give the experience and speak from, his true stories and pull guys and gals aside and give them some feedback and some direction on what they should be doing. So I thought that, that was interesting. And really, he wasn't sure who the current locker room leader is. And, with the lack of camaraderie, guys just kind of working and going their separate ways, maybe there isn't, the same kind of push to be a locker room leader, to take someone to the side. And he wasn't really sure, who that current locker room leader was, if it wasn't Roman Reigns right now. Another aspect that could be, good or it could also be bad was this idea of, maybe how hungry everybody is. He's like, maybe everyone just wants to respect each other, get along. And back in his locker room, he had himself, Stone Cold, Bret Hart, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, all those guys, not necessarily backstabbing each other, but definitely would do whatever it takes to get to the top. Nowadays, it's more very respectful. Whoever, is assigned as a lead guy, whoever the company is definitely behind, that's kind of just their leader. It's not as much of, that competition to be number one, to be the top guy. And that's good and bad. It's good to have that ambition. It's good to be hungry and want to be number one. I definitely believe in that. But there's also the bad thing of all the politics and obviously some of the backstabbing that had to happen for people to become the locker room leader and to become the man back then, as opposed to just letting the company decide, hey, we're going to pay you either way, but we're going to decide who is the top person and who's maybe more of a mid-card person. So definitely recommend you checking out this interview, whether it's with McAfee and Hawk Sports Talk or whether it's one of the other rounds that the Undertaker is making. He also mentioned that in traditional Vince McMahon, traditional WWE kind of style, the last episode is going to be Sunday, I believe, 10 a.m. Eastern. And as of Thursday, as of yesterday, they're still putting the final touches on it. It kind of goes along with the stories that we hear from Monday Night Raw, how the script is tossed out. What's going to happen is tossed out an hour before it happens, and they're putting the final touches on it maybe minutes before go live. So even with a proper documentary that they're going around doing the media rounds, promoting it, trying to get everyone to watch it on the network, even something like that is has the final touches on it the very last minute. So, I just want to talk about, so let us know, follow us on our Facebook page at Wrestling Stable on Facebook, tweet us at Wrestling Stable on Twitter. Also, you could find us, look for Wrestling Stable on YouTube. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. Love to talk to you more. But thanks for checking out Wrestling Stable. Have a great, great weekend, and we will see you Monday. And thanks for visiting Wrestling Stable, where you don't join, you're chosen.